what a dummy! Welcome back to the Fantasy Rugby Draft podcast. Thanks for downloading and listening. I'm Bruce Wilkinson, and joining me again in the booth is the man primarily made of moss, Nathan Mossman. How are you, sir?
I'm almost disappointed that we won't be starting with some non-rugby related question.
Oh, I thought
it was so good last week.
It was cracking, wasn't it? It was great. We had a lot of really good feedback about that. There's obviously a number of Game of Thrones fans. I was going to bring a bit more somber note and say happy Anzac Day.
Do you say Happy Anzac Day?
Well, that's the thing, right? I'm not too sure it's a Happy Anzac Day. But how was the dawn service this morning nonetheless?
It was very good. Yeah, it was well attended. It's impressive to see that many people out literally at the crack of dawn.
Yeah, that's right. No, it's a good event. It's a good remembrance. I like it. Just on Anzac Day, so 5 years ago now. Yeah, 5 years ago now, I actually proposed to my wife on Anzac Day. And there's a little story around folks who are single or are not yet married. A little tip to see if you can do most milestones on a memorable day of something else. So my proposal day was April 25th. My first date was Valentine's Day. That was engineered. And the wedding date, or our anniversary now, is the Diamond Jubilee for the Queen. So I'm not going to forget anything, so it makes it easier for those folks who have a little bit of a forgetful memory around remembering anniversaries, birthdays, to put another key date on it, and you'll remember it that way. So April 25th I'll always remember as Anzac Day, and the day that I proposed to the missus.
That's clever. I like that. And just to flip, because we are flip-flopping a little bit here, back to the Game of Thrones things. One thing that we're not going to do on this podcast is talk about episodes of Game of Thrones while the season's going, because there's another podcast which I used to listen to and I don't listen to anymore, where they would come on each week and go, oh wow, did you see that episode? I couldn't believe that this happened. And I'm like, guys, I'm one of those people that I save up all the episodes and I just binge watch them at the end of the season, and here they are just giving away spoilers, beginning of the podcast. So no, we won't be doing that.
It's getting increasingly more difficult to avoid that, isn't it, nowadays, with the amount of social media around you. A lot of the time you can block it out, but there's just such a few around Game of Thrones now, isn't there, that you do well to avoid as much as you can. Good luck.
Well, that's the thing. Just my suggestion is they avoid all other podcasts and just listen to this one, because you have my personal guarantee that's not going to happen.
Yeah, that's fair. That's a good call. I like it. We're going to review Gameweek 9. We're going to have a look at a few free agents, and then we're going to look at the scores and managers for Gameweek 9 as well. Instead of doing the match of the day poll for the last on, I figured I'd make it an executive decision and put it down to Highlanders Sharks. But I did ask for another poll. We put another poll out there, and it was which midfielder let you down the most. So the options we had were Damian, Allende, Sefa Naivalu, and Francois. What do you think? Who do you think folks voted for the most midfielder that destroyed your matchup, is how we phrased it?
I voted for Naivalu.
So did I.
So I'm imagining that it was probably him.
Yeah, it was. It was 57% Naivalu, Damian Allende 33%, and Francois 10%. I think the Naivalu one is that at least we'd seen the week before that he put up good figures, and he was playing against the Cheetahs. Everything was kind of trending towards a pretty booming match, but yeah, that was bad. At least Damian Allende's got a little bit of a rust excuse. He hasn't quite hit his straps yet. He's fairly involved still, but he didn't quite hit his straps, so I think that's why managers potentially let him off with a poor result. Alright, let's pile into not Highlanders Sharks then. Let's go straight into that game, the Rebels Cheetahs game. I guess from a rugby draft perspective, Reece Hodge was pretty impressive at centre.
Yeah, I just want to pump the brakes a little bit on Reece Hodge. When I looked at those two tries, one of them was, I think it might have been the first one, was a mismatch where he went between, he went on the outside of a prop.
That's right.
And just sort of went from there. The other was a a bad read on defence by Venter, who didn't get across in time, and then a very poor attempt at a covering tap. Well, I think, to be fair, I think it might have been Fred Zelinga who just fell over, getting stepped. It's always difficult, obviously, when you're trying to come across in that situation. But yeah, so for me, there was, you hate to say luck, but there was an element of good fortune, shall we say, in both of those.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with the Hodge. I think you clearly saw that prop was running in quicksand for the first try, and Francois Venter was pathetic. That tackling was ridiculous. There's another one that he did for Jonah Placid's try, with Tamati Allison got him as well. That was just laughable. So not only did he let down with points, but he's leaking tries at the other end as well. With Reece Hodge though, I've read a number of articles saying how he's having an outstanding debut season, and I don't know, there was a pretty good game first up, 2 or 3 games in the middle where he didn't really do much, and then this was a good performance, but as you say, it needs to be qualified in terms of what actually were the mitigating factors in him performing well. But I guess they're going to stick with him because Inman's still 2-3 weeks away, and you're not going to bench a guy like that. So how much value do you think he has going forward? Would you prefer Tamati or Hodge?
I guess while he's in the team, you probably stick with Hodge.
I'd be tempted with Tamati, even though that was a bit of a meat pie at the end to get that run away and under the posts. He looks good, Tamati Ellison.
No, he is, and he's a good footballer. I think he's probably more valuable to their team from a rugby point of view. But it's just at the moment, Hodge is kind of getting that luck, and sometimes you sort of want to ride it. But I don't think he's a special talent.
No, neither. Okay. Jack DePascini took the kicks. Scored okay. What else do we want to say about this apart from the fact that Sefa Venter let you down? Some pretty ordinary tackling for the most part.
Yeah, there wasn't a whole lot else, I guess. Jonah Placid is decent. I think we've said in the past, when he plays, he's worth playing.
Yeah, this wasn't the most captivating game of them all. I think the Rebels just slowly wore them down at the end and got over the line. Anything more for you before we move on?
Colby Firingen did get on the field, and the commentators did talk him up about being the top ball stealer, I think, in the side last year.
Okay. Alright, just a point to note, I guess, if you've got Geordie Reid, just, I guess, be prepared. Alright, Sunwolves Juarez. What the hell happened in this game? This was crazy. So the Juarez, I understand. Now, I didn't actually see this match. I'm just going on what I saw in the highlights. But the Juarez looked like they were playing okay until they weren't, and then the Sunwolves got momentum.
And I think that's one of the things about the Sunwolves is they do have fits and starts, don't they? They play in periods, and that was good enough to win in a game against the Juarez, who, just I just don't know what to make of them. I think we said that coming into this game that I just don't have a lot of faith in them, and this kind of showed why. They looked like at one point that they were going to do it easy. I mean, literally at one point I looked at the score and I thought, no, yeah, they're going long point per minute. This could be another 80 or something. But obviously then, just the wheels sort of fell off.
So who scored? So just looking at the points there from Fantasy Rugby, it looks like Geronimo went okay, and obviously the Juarez front row, Sonny Bill Creevy must have been involved in a bit.
Yeah. No, as you pointed out, he's a top class player, and I think he's always going to be involved. So he played well. Both teams scored some quite good tries, good backline tries. Issa came through with an intercept.
Oh yeah, that was a bit of a meat pie, wasn't it? Yeah. Still good reading, but nice to get those 50 metres, cheap metres.
John Martin sort of still looked fairly average.
So the uptick for Sunwolves wasn't, well, maybe it was an uptick. He's just playing really badly.
Yeah. And PC was good. Carpenter got on the score sheet again.
Yeah, I saw that try. Took his line well, but there was a couple of other bits where I thought he looks quite good. And it sounds like they're coming around. They've got some high raps on him. Listening to the commentators, the first couple of games they weren't giving him those accolades, but now they seem to be saying, he's having a wonderful season and, a great find and all the right things you want to hear. So, really good line.
Yep. Viljoen took a shot at goal.
Oh, did he?
Yep.
Was it on half-time from about 75, or what was the story?
Yeah, exactly. It was towards the end of the game. There wouldn't seem to be a really good reason for it. I think maybe PC might have just said, maybe I've got a sore leg or something, and you just have a go, and he didn't, and he got it. So, yeah. Viljoen is actually, he's a good player.
He is, and he's a good fantasy player as well, right? So he clocks up those points, and I wonder if it's just because he knew that everyone was going to be immortalised who won this game. Every player was going to be held in such high esteem, but he just wanted to be part of being on a score sheet that's going to be, made into some sort of statue somewhere at some point.
Yeah. No, the crowd were right behind this, and there were some big celebrations at full time as well.
Can you imagine if they did ever win Super Rugby or a World Cup? Japan would implode.
Yeah.
It just would fall to pieces.
I think it might. Yeah.
It was awesome. They've just been pumped by 90. They've got no memory of that. The supporters, they just turn up the next day, and they're like the opposite of the Arsenal crowd, right? They've got no memories. They just cheer and support their team on, and it makes a difference. You can see the guys just lift to it, and the howling at scrum time that they've decided to do is obviously they've focused on the set piece weakness as well and trying to lift themselves. Brilliant. What else in this game? Anything more?
No, I mean, Tatakawa was actually the top scorer in this game. And to be fair, he'd scored fairly well coming into it as well. I think that all the Sunwolves backline players are actually, they're not too bad at home anyway.
Yep.
Against perhaps some of the weaker opposition. They'll probably do okay.
Yeah, so Paia went okay, didn't he? He's listed as a midfielder, but he looked okay. In terms of Fantasy Rugby, did he get involved much?
Yeah, he was involved a reasonable amount.
Right.
Yeah, no, he did come off his wing, and he chased kicks. Lola here was the disappointing one, but that was because he got injured. Him and Tukalit came off in the same incident.
Right.
So Tukalit went up for a high ball, Lola here coming through to challenge, and basically they collided in the air. Tukalit ended up landing on his head, came off concussed, and Lola here, as he came down, got his ankle twisted up underneath him. That looked pretty nasty. So they both left the field and didn't come back.
Alright, so points.
And that was pretty early on.
Best have a look at that fantasy on your waiver wire. See if you make provisions for that. I'm not too sure who will come in for that. I guess it's Sasakura, is it?
Well, I mean, we don't. What do we know about Yamada?
Yeah, no, he's still away. I think he's still at least a couple of weeks. I would have thought, because it was 4 weeks out or 4 to 6 when it happened. And
right.
That was about 2 weeks ago by my count, or maybe 3 weeks ago.
There was a winger that, well, he's not just a winger. I think he generally plays other positions, that did come on and score. A pretty handy try, actually. Pretty decent finish, handing off somebody to score. I'd imagine it'd probably be him.
Okay. All right.
Can't remember the name. But
Sure. Okay, let's move on to Chiefs Hurricanes then. This looked a pretty interesting match. Good to see Jason Woodward shelling that try in the end, I imagine. Nathan, was it?
There was some applause from myself.
Yes. I mean, it was bad. It was a little bit out in front of him, but it was bad, right?
It wasn't good, no.
No. So this match, though, is this Tamanivalu's coming out party? Was this his moment where he said, right, I'm going to start playing Super Rugby now, and I'm going to take it by the scruff of the neck?
I think it'll be the point where if you're running the ball close to the line and you're the Chiefs, you're thinking, give it to him. Because he's that Karevi type player that can just barge through a couple of people and carry them over the line. Yep.
Yeah, I know Shag's very keen on him, and he's been keeping a very close eye on his development, or his lack of development last year, I guess, at the Chiefs. But
we'll put it this.
So go on.
Yeah. So put it this way: as somebody who traded him away last week to get Naivalu back, I am regretting that decision. Not just because of the points, but I just think maybe I might have pulled the trigger too quickly. I mean, we're talking about a guy that's playing for the best team in Super Rugby, at least at this point. Always going to be on the end of a backline that's going to score. And you might not necessarily be able to say that about Naivalu, and I guess that's probably where I am starting to question myself.
I mean, I suspect when you pulled that trigger, there was still an unknown around Anton Leonard-Brown, in that he was competing for that centre position, but he seems to be having quite a few complications with that knee, as you alluded to last week, in the draining and the dirt and et cetera, et cetera. So it looks like it might actually be Tamanivalu's job now, and maybe that's all he needed. Or maybe he just needed a bit of a fillip to say, you've got the starting position against the Chiefs, and that was enough motivation. I guess the flip side of that is, you saw him charging through midfield a number of times. Proctor Arso, what's going on there?
Very little went on there.
That's right.
Just not creative and not blockbusting with ball in hand, which seems like just the ideal combination that you don't want.
Exactly. Yeah, one to note there. I don't know how long that's going to last for. Certainly Lamapi should probably come in for 12. Still interested to see, because they want to get Proctor that 13. But Holo came on. Did he have much time on?
I actually did not make note of anything that he did. So
he scored 1 or 2 points or something like that, so it can't have been very long.
No.
Back to Charlie Ngatai got pulled about an hour before kick-off. Got an hour before Gameweek lock on Friday night, and we got the news. A lot of folks again missed out on the news because we've banged that drum many times. But suffice to say, turn your notifications on Facebook and on Twitter, and you get those. We turn ours on quite late on in the week, so you don't have to have it on during the whole week, but just later on that kind of Thursday and Friday, so you don't miss out on some really important news like this one. How did Aaron Cruden go? We heard did you hear that Radio Sport interview? One of our astute listeners, Blair Jackson, dropped us a little bit of a snippet of an interview on Radio Sport. And Dave Rennie said on Friday afternoon I was driving home about 5 o'clock, he said that he's going to reward Damian McKenzie for his consistent and accurate goal kicking and give him the job. Where previously he had said, after the bye week, I'm handing it over to Aaron Cruden. Do you think this is a well done Damian McKenzie, or bloody hell, I'm worried about Aaron Cruden's kicking? Which side of the fence do you think that the needle points towards?
I think it's probably the former, just because I don't think that he would come out and I guess have a vote of no confidence in a player in that way. The other thing, though, of course, is that with him, it always makes me wonder whether there's something else behind things, because he just seems to constantly be sort of plotting to the point where it wouldn't surprise you if he just changed it back to Cruden next week, just on a whim. So this was a game where obviously the goal kicking would have helped Cruden because things didn't go his way from a fantasy point of view this week. Not that he didn't play well, but you're going to get weeks like this, and that's where you want the fly half kicking goals, because at least it'll drag him into double figures.
Yeah, so I think Rennie's comment is the clever bit. It is the cunning way of subtly saying, I'm worried to Aaron Cruden, without saying I'm worried about Aaron Cruden. But the implication is there. But for 99% of the rugby public, they're hearing, well done, Damian McKenzie's playing well, keep it with him. But I think deep down it's got other connotations. But back onto his wiliness, do you care to wade in on that Golden Oldies discussion at the last 5 minutes?
Well, yeah, that wasn't in the highlights, so I actually don't know what happened there.
Oh, okay, cool.
You'll have to talk about it. I know that they had Golden Oldies scrums because they showed the last couple of scrums in Golden Oldies, but I don't know why it happened.
Okay. So going back to Dave Rennie's wiliness, it wouldn't surprise me if that was a deliberate ploy at the end, because the Chiefs scrum was getting pumped, to go to Golden Oldies by taking off, I think it might have been the second or the reserve tight head prop, so they couldn't compete, so they had 2 injured tight head props. But instead of, what they obviously forgot to account for was the fact that if you're taking off the last reserve tight head prop or front rower, it goes to Golden Oldies, but you can't replace that player if he comes off injured. So the Chiefs played with 14 men. So I think they thought they were being a little bit cunning. Now, maybe I'm just being way too suspicious here. Maybe I'm just casting aspersions where they shouldn't be, and that he was actually injured, but it seemed very, very coincidental. And Dane Coles brought that up at one point. He said, seems a little bit coincidental, Joubert, that this is happening now. But then the Chiefs were like dumbfounded when they couldn't replace a player, so they played with 14 for the last minute. So the Hurricanes scrum had been dominating most of the evening as well. So it's a little bit of a weird one, but I think there's always, if you're not pushing the envelope, you're not trying type thing. So it was a really odd moment. There was a lot of scratching heads. And look, it's the first time I'd seen the rule. Do you remember an All Black game, a Springbok game a while ago that happened, and they were allowed to replace him, but it went to Golden Oldie scrum, even though that the reserve prop did have some experience of playing on that side of the scrum? Do you remember that last year?
Well, we saw one. I don't specifically remember that one. There was, I think even last week or the week before, we had a situation with Golden Oldie scrums where there was a perfectly healthy prop who was just a specialist on the other side, and the commentators, especially Nisbet, I think was just absolutely gutted that the prop couldn't switch sides.
Sure. No, it seemed an interesting one. Sam Cane certainly was not particularly happy with the way that it had come out, which is not surprising. Try and remove your one-eyed patch. Would you have Ardie Savea as the All Blacks 7 at the moment, or Sam Cane?
It's a tricky one just because we tend to look at these things just from this fantasy point of view. Mm-hmm. And it's not always about
kind of. Not with Ardie Savea though, right? He's at every ruck, and he has got a motor this season that he's just stepped up.
Yep. No, I suppose if it was just purely on form, you'd say yes.
And do you think, well, clearly, this is what the decision is, and this is what he's thinking as well, with the decision to pull out of the Rio Olympics?
Yeah, it would suggest to me that he's probably been tapped on the shoulder, or maybe got the text message that said, "Hey, now's probably a good time for you to stick around."
Yeah, that's right. And
you're in with a real good shot here.
That's right, and it's now or never, right? This is such a pivotal moment when it comes to picking in 7 for the future, and if he's never going to be playing better, maybe he will. I don't know. I don't really know that, but it's very difficult to expect him to play any better because he's playing so well at the moment. I think that this is his chance. That's not to say Sam Cane isn't playing badly. He's playing really well too. But it's, as you said, it's one of those good problems to have.
Well, yeah, and in a Hansen team, once you get in pole position,
yeah, that's right.
You've got that job for a while because he doesn't switch horses.
No, he doesn't. And I wonder if it's, how he said at the start of the season, it was like McGann might have said, do you think anyone remembers if I gave Sir Zaka the captain? Do you think anyone will remember that? Because Ben Meehan was playing quite well. You wonder if Hansen might be thinking the same thing. I wonder if anyone remembers if Sam Cane got the captaincy at last year's World Cup. Can I just take that away? Can I put Ardie Savea above him at the moment? Anything more from this game? I guess Beauden Barrett, number 1 stud.
Yeah, but
I know.
Goal kicking.
I was wondering how long we'd get before a but. Yep.
Just really poor.
Bad, wasn't it?
Goal kicking. Yeah.
Jason Woodward was good.
Yeah.
1 from 1.
So yeah, there was quite a lot of bad kicking across the weekend, but his sort of stood out. And probably the last thing just on this game was for that Tamanivalu try where Justin Marshall said, "This is rubbish." He was absolutely wrong. There was the MO was spot on. He said there was no separation, and there wasn't.
I hope you're all sitting down, listeners. Justin Marshall was wrong.
But he doesn't understand the rules,
No.
But it was exactly as it was described. There was no separation between the ball in his hand and then the ball hits the ground. You only need to have a finger on it to get down with pressure, and that's exactly what happened.
Yeah, no, it was. That's the rule. It can look a little bit odd slowing it down, but that's the rule, and that's been the rule for a number of years. Force Waratahs, fairly good day for all your Waratahs players, I guess. How did the second stanza of Folau at 13 go?
I'm a little bit worried about it. I just felt like he just doesn't get the same kind of opportunities. And it's strange because you will look at this and there's a try and there was an assist in here. And as I was watching it, I was hoping that would happen because I'm thinking to myself, if I'm going to try and trade him, it's going to be much easier for me if he puts up a score. And I'm seriously considering it because I just think that on the long run, this is going to affect him. It just didn't, it didn't feel right to me. I just didn't think that he's not getting the open spaces. Those carries back are sort of affecting him. It's times he sort of seems like he's stuck on one side of the field, where at fullback you could sort of pop up anywhere. So I am considering it. I mean, obviously you'd be trying to get top value, and I think the fact that he did put up 20-something points is going to help that.
Yeah, look, there is no greater name to be able to trade on than Israel Folau. You know, you'll get top dollar no matter what from someone in your league, even if he's not particularly performing very well. People will pay for that. So I think, it's probably not a bad shout if you're a bit concerned. How about Callaway? So he second week for the fullback experiment. I saw he had an assist. I only saw the highlights of this as well.
Yeah, he was playing in a team that was dominant, and I think that helped him. I didn't think he did anything too special. Didn't look like he was a standout. Yeah,
so Horn, Reece Robb, they all scored tries, finishing up pretty much on the end of a pass. Phipps going well again, and Jed Holloway continues to be the number one lock in the game. 18 points this week. It's big numbers, and it's big consistent numbers that he's putting up as well. I think, I don't know if it's too late to try and trade for him, but you've got to at least try. For the Force, Haylett Petty is probably about the only player you'd actually ever want to pick out of the Force at the moment, without Jono Lance in the team. And he came good, 19 points.
Yep. He's consistent. This is at the high end of his consistent range, but this is still sort of what he does.
Yeah, that's good. And Bernard Foley, good to see him coming back to where we thought he would be at the start of the season in terms of in a lot of the backline play, in a lot of their moves, in a lot of their counter attacks, and scoring quite well as well.
Yeah, this is definitely a more Foley-like performance.
Yeah, hands on the ball, isn't it? You see him pop up everywhere, and that's usually what we're seeing with him.
Yeah, and running good support lines. And he's going to pick up points doing that as well. So I think moving forward, you start to have a little bit more faith in him, I think.
Sure. Anyone else for the Force that kind of stood out for a positive reason? The two players stood out for some woeful tackling and defending were Rassellier and Mazarewa a couple of times. They were just abysmal. But apart from that...
The only other standout really was one of Peter Grant's shots at goal, which kind of skidded along the ground. It was probably about head height.
Oh, really?
And came up, I'd say probably about 10, 15 metres short of the posts.
Brilliant. Was that kick the kick of the weekend, or Ben Smith's clearance to touch?
Oh, I think Ben Smith's one would take it. That was a beauty.
That was a cracker, wasn't it? Okay, anything more from the Force Waratahs then?
No, there really wasn't. This was up there amongst some of the poorer games. I think it was just basically because only one team sort of turned up to play. And
yeah, that's right. Okay, Stormers Reds. Stormers got a little bit of a surprise that the Reds were going quite well, but they just came over them at the end. Who performed well in this game? Obviously, Karebi got the highlights and the points I saw.
Yeah, I still thought Kamako Hunt looked decent.
Yeah, he finished his try well, didn't he?
Yeah, like you said, the Reds were well in this. They just sort of faded away towards the end. But they were okay. There was through the first half at least anyway, there was signs that this revival that they've been having actually might have some legs.
Yep. And I see for the Stormers, so Jean-Luc played well, but your man Thompson comes on and he's scoring 19 points in fantasy rugby as well. It seems to be, they were scratching around the Stormers for so many years, and they were making do with your Kurt Coleman type players, and all of a sudden they've got 3 now, by my count. 3 young kids coming through.
Jean-Luc is, he's good. I like him. I think we talked about him a little bit last week when we were talking about fixtures as a player, maybe to trade for, and I definitely think if you could get him and stash him away, he's going to have value. There'll be home games where I think he'll fill his boots.
He's got a little bit of a nose for the line now as well, a little bit more confident. He does that head fake, the head step, doesn't he? He does the kind of looks one way and goes the other. So Thompson, what do we make of that? Is that just coming on at the end in a tied team, kicking some goals, or?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, okay, cool.
Yep.
We mentioned on Monday that we're a little bit worried about Zas because he was a bit of a lone ranger and he sits out on the wing, doesn't necessarily get himself in any closer than that and kind of waits for stuff to happen. And obviously, Flex had a little bit of a chat as well around that because he popped up, doing a pick and go for his try that he took quite well, to be fair to him, for a little guy.
Yeah, it was quite odd to have him pick and go off a ruck, and the two guys who were trying to stop him were both backs as well.
Nice. But how did he go overall? He still didn't massively trouble the scores. 12, 13 points is pretty good, I think, for someone you picked up on free agency and you didn't draft.
Yeah, sure. I mean, you'd be happy with it, but I think he's definitely come down off that plateau of big name top midfielders, which I think he was there or thereabouts at one point. So from that point of view, when I guess to say I'm worried is perhaps not.
No, that's fair.
Fair, but what I mean is that my expectations are lowered now.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's fair. Who is your top midfielder at the moment?
Probably Karevi.
Yeah, I think it is too. Chaz Natai, when he comes back from injury, is probably not far away, but it's, Karevi just looks like he's unstoppable at the moment.
Well, he just has beast mode, which not a lot of other players do. There was one point at this game where he sort of picked up the ball and he was completely stationary, and Cheslin Colby came in to tackle him and he just threw him away, sort of stopped and just looked at him for a bit and then stepped over him and ran down and handed somebody else off. He can just do that. He can go from a standing start to just running through people.
he can, and the bit that so I don't think it would have been lost on any Wallaby selectors, Michael Checker, that he ran over Allende a couple of times or ran through his space that he was supposed to be taking. Storm's front row, looks like Vincent Koch charging up the middle of the field is going to get you 26 points when that happens. They've actually been they got some boom and bust toppy kind of performances in them, haven't they?
Yeah. They actually had a new hooker as well who looked fairly, I'm going to try and pronounce his name, Mbonambi?
Sure.
Mbonambi, yeah. Who looked quite live wire in that toolbox sort of way.
Okay.
So when you've got two big ball carrying props, and then you've got a hooker like that, then it's obviously happy days.
Yeah, absolutely. So the last 4 weeks have been 1.5, 44.5, 2.4, 26.6. Ladies and gentlemen, your 2016 Stormers front row.
Roller coaster.
Yeah, absolutely. How did your second favourite cheese get on at fullback?
He was actually all right.
Is he?
Yeah, no, he was decent. His problem, I guess, and we've pointed out before, is he just isn't big enough to power through certain situations where other players might. Mm-hmm. But he was getting into situations and beating players with his footwork, and so he's okay. He's someone obviously that's worth starting, but he's just hampered, I think, by that.
So Nizam Carr's come in and made everything a little bit more confusing. When Berger is fit and comes back, what's your best guess to that loose forward trio? Because Notche, he's played well for a couple of weeks, but this week he put up a 0.1, whereas Carr is trending in the other direction.
Berger does look like he's got a lot of miles on his clock, and he's just not quite the player that he was, I think.
Sure. If you had to have, someone was asking us on Twitter, actually, it was, I can't remember who it was, but they were asking whether you'd have Nizam Carr or Notche, if you'd only roster one.
Well, if it was just on ability rather than selection issues, then I'd still stick with Notche, I think. Just because I think he's more likely to be able to bust one. But the way things are going, I guess it's...
They liked Carr at the start, didn't they? But they've gone away from him because he did have a bit of a slump in the middle there. But I think it's not Shea. I said, look, give him another chance. Just because it's like what we talked about with Sean Stevenson versus Tony Pulu, right? The upside is there with not Shea. Carr will get you, this is a really good performance from him to get to 19, but I suspect his okay performance is around about that 9 through 12 point range, whereas not Shea, he'll get you those running meters like Kieran Reid would out wider. That's not to say Carr doesn't play fairly loose as well, but it's just we've seen it a bit more with not Shea this season. Okay. Anything more from this match in particular?
The force
was good.
Yeah, he was actually, and the force continues to be with Liam Gill.
And he's still there, is he? Yeah. So who's your Wallaby open side? It always surprises me that Gill's never in that conversation.
Yeah, well, Hooper's the captain though, right? So.
Yeah, so you're going to have, because there's been quite a bit of talk, especially the green and gold rugby guys have been thrashing this out quite a bit, which has been quite fun. But whether you have McMahon or where you have him in the piece, if you're going to have Scott Fardy at 6 and potentially Pocock at 8, Hooper at 7, you're probably going to have to, or maybe you switch them around. Don't know. Maybe you put McMahon at side and you don't have Fardy, but you lose a line out option then. But yeah, Gill's never in the conversation. I always feel a little bit harsh for that. Okay, let's move on to Lions Kings then. Talk us through this match. How did Jaco van der Walt go at fly half?
Better than Louis Fauché.
Yeah, what is happening there? Talk me through that.
He was just awful, and it just when the wheels started to come up, it wasn't just he started missing shots at goal, but twice in a row he put the ball out on the full from kickoffs, and it wasn't like close either. Right. Quite far out. It just seemed everything just seemed to kind of go wrong for him, and then he started knocking the ball on, and it clearly wasn't his day.
Wow. Okay. Well, let's put that there. Would you rather have Jaco van der Walt or Louis Fauché?
I think it would sort of depend on who they were playing too.
True. We talked about the Lions running though last week, right? And this is one of the Kings games, and they've got another couple of easier ones as well.
Yeah.
Don't know. I'd start thinking about it. What about Jaco or someone like Peter Grant?
Gee, yeah, it's starting to get a bit closer. I think it would purely be on matchup.
Okay.
I think that's would come.
So you wouldn't roster Jaco van der Walt on your bench?
No.
Okay.
Not at this point. No, I'd want to see it a little bit more first.
Okay. All right. For the Lions, Ruan Combrinck, pretty impressive.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, he's a good player. We like him.
Would he be your number 5? I was trying to think of the outside backs. So you'll have McKenzie, James Lowe, Nadolo, and Folau.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And then he would be 5th?
So those 5 not necessarily in any order, I guess?
No, not in order, no.
Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah,
I can't think of he's got that upside, right? He's got that ability to get the 40, 50 points, which, some outside backs don't necessarily have. He's really impressive. I'll be surprised if he's not the right winger for the Springboks. He should be. How did the Warthog go?
Warthog was good.
Doing his Warthog usual.
That's right, yeah.
2 tries, was it?
Yeah, I think they were both from... Were they both from driving mauls? I can't remember now.
Yeah, they were pretty close in. Certainly one was a pick and go right at the end. But yeah, no, really, really good. Elton Yenchty scored well. I think, when you're playing against the Kings, I actually subbed in Elton for a couple of Richie Mwangas in a couple of my leagues. This type of matchup is just mouth-watering for someone like him.
Yeah.
And Warren Whiteley scored well, which is really good.
Yep.
Jaco didn't get named in this, which is a little bit of a concern. I think they might have been, and this is a bit harsh for any Kings listeners out there, might have been seeing this as a bye week. Anything more from this match? Who played well over and above the usual suspects for the Lions, or was it just everybody?
It kind of was just everybody. I think in games like this, there's going to be a handful of people who are going to score really highly, and then maybe 1 or 2 that you're unlucky if they don't score highly.
Okay.
And that's basically, I think that's sort of going to be the pattern against the Kings and the Sunwolves and some of these other teams. You go I'm willing to go pretty much all in on them, and then, you're sort of unlucky. So it could easily have been, say, Mapo that put up the big numbers here. It wasn't. It's just one of those things.
Yep. Okay. All right, let's move on then to the last match of the round. So Brumbies Crusaders. Fairly impressive performance from the Crusaders.
Great performance, yeah, and worrying signs for the Australian teams, just generally, really, that you'd have to say this is their number one team. I mean, it's not now. Rebels are top of the Australian Conference, and that's kind of a sad state of affairs, really, because I don't think they're particularly good. So if this was sort of a battle to show some ascendancy between the two conferences, then, worrying signs.
We made mention of it when it happened about 4 weeks ago, just before the Brumbies went across to South Africa, but the whole back office situation there with Michael Jones and being fired and getting an injunction and then not getting fired, and now I believe they have to put it in written bit of paper and he's about to get fired again. It just seems to have... There's no coincidences in this type of situation. I don't think there's a coincidence between their lack of form and on the paddock and this type of destabilisation effect happening in the back office. It just seems to have taken out. Now, this is a tough game to say that, though. The Crusaders are on a tear, and it seems to be whoever they plug and play in those positions plays well as well. It seems to be, and this has always been a bit of a case with the Crusader-type rugby, is that the system is better than the player. And no more evident than that was Ryan Crotty's replacement, Havili. He's really good.
Yeah,
really,
and also McNichol's replacement, Jonah Mackay, who just slotted in, and we didn't lose anything at all from having McNichol not there.
No, there's some quite ridiculous offloading for Dag's first try. First was Havili's offload, and then it was Nadolo's just out of this world offload to set up Dag to go through. They got really, when it doesn't work, a la the Force game, it looks shambolic. But when it sticks, like it does for the Brumbies game, you look like world beaters, and they did at this point. I did read an article, and maybe this is someone just wanting to get a little bit more clicks to their site than actually believing it, but saying that Scott Barrett is potentially the number 3 lock in New Zealand at the moment. Now, when you sit down and hear that, it seems a bit hyperbolic, but when you actually go through the list, he's not far away. He's not far away at all. I've got a wee point here around, so you know how we've chatted about this whole, what happens at the end of the game? Do they have the option to take the line out, or do they have to take the line out if they kick it out from a penalty? So this time, he kicked it straight out, and they didn't have to take the line out. Now, I don't know if that's just because they were humping them and the ref just called time, or whether it actually was something there. But it seems as though, and I think this is what we've seen, this was how the rule was intended, is that you had the option to take the line out, and that it's been refereed incorrectly for the previous 7 weeks, or the 8 weeks that it was. Our point to note is around Joe Tamani, came off at the end. So just keep an eye on information around that. It didn't look good. He looked a bit forlorn, if you will, and he was dragging that ankle as well. Kurandrani played a little bit better. I wonder how much of that was to do with not having... There's a little bit more space there, but instead of Crotty coming up a lot flatter. But Kieran Fonatere, the Fons, just keeps getting it done, doesn't he?
He does, yeah. That's the only down sort of tick I would have from at one point. He should have passed to a couple of guys on the outside. Mackay was one. That would have been another try. So it could have been another assist, another try for Mackay. It could have been even better, but got a little bit greedy there.
Yeah, that's right. I see Nadolo's been cited for a tip tackle. So Jason Emery's having his court session or whatever it is tonight at about 7 o'clock. I suspect Nadolo's might be tomorrow now. But I've seen it again. Yeah, I can see why they might raise it and they might suspend him. But it's the Crusaders bye week next week anyway, so he would have definitely gone and played club rugby. Anything more from this match?
Really like Matt Todd. Starting to really
awesome.
like. Matt Todd as a fantasy option. Just think he's somebody that, considering that maybe as recently as 3 weeks ago he might have been on your waiver wire because he'd sort of underperformed a little bit, but now he looks really good, and I think he's somebody that I wouldn't mind targeting.
Absolutely.
It might be a little bit difficult now considering he's put up points again, but if you could get hold of him, I'd definitely try to do that. And the other thing, probably the last thing I'd note is Aiden Toa put up 16 points, which you'd look and you'd go, oh, that's good. It's quite handy. But he was pulled on 55 minutes, I think, around about that point for Nigel R. Wong. Mm-hmm. And it might have been not long after he just put in a really woeful attempt to stop Cody Taylor.
I remember that. Yep.
That was very poor.
It was.
And I just wonder whether it's the kind of thing that the coaches are just right. I'm just starting to lose my mind with you. So I think it could be interesting. There could be something.
It's just shaky, isn't it? It's just shaky. And that was a terrible attempt. You at least got to get in the way and slow him down because you know someone potentially could come and catch Cody from behind.
That's right. Yeah, it's strange that after a 16-point performance, but I still just think he's just looks like you said shaky. So wouldn't surprise me if he happened to get the hook from the team at some point.
The Matt Todd's a great call. So it's taken a few weeks. That injury is obviously a bit serious, but it's taken him a few weeks to get back into his Crusader role, which is that left-right out in the flanks, kind of what Kieran Reid does for the All Blacks. That's what Matt Todd does for the Crusaders, and he always gets his arm free in that tackle. So put everything aside from his turnover ability, all the tackles that he makes and everything like that. His ball running is really, really impressive as well, and he gets a lot of offloads away. And I really like Matt Todd, and I'm glad you brought that up because he is someone that isn't a name, isn't a Xavier, isn't a Kane, isn't one of those flashy type players even like a Blake Gibson or a Yurakira Ioane. He's someone that it goes under the radar, but will start to stack up a lot of fantasy points for you. All right, anything more from this apart from Havili's redonkulous pickup for Cody Taylor's try?
Yeah, that was pretty cool. No, I don't think so.
Okay, cool. All right, let's cross across to the free agent desk then and see if there's any players that are worth adding. I guess the highest scoring free agent out there was Andre Esterhausen. He's at 12.7%. Sorry, he's 19.2% owned. You rushing out to add him to your waiver wire? Add him to your team?
No, I'm not. I think he's a player that's going to be kicking around the waiver wire on and off during the season. Probably someone that people will be using to fill in on bye weeks.
So Sasakura is probably the guy you were talking about, I suspect, for the season.
It is.
22.2 points. I guess if you've got Lola here, you need to be aware that he's probably someone to pick up.
I mean, the Sunwolves are actually on a bye next week.
Oh, are they? Okay, fine.
Which probably downplays that a little bit.
That will limit them. There's no point. That's a situational play for those. Boffelli, he's on again, off again, dropped again. He's always floating around that really low kind of ownership mark. He scored quite well this week.
Yeah, well, the Jags are playing the Kings at home next week.
Okay.
You think they're ever gonna
ever
gonna put up a score on somebody, it should be that game.
That's interesting. Yeah, so that's probably not a bad player to target. But considering he did come off the bench, right?
That's right. Yeah. But I guess we'll have to look and see Tukalet whether he is. I imagine he'll go through the concussion protocol.
Sure.
It's actually hard to know exactly what the injury was because he did sort of land on his head and shoulder,
right.
And was stationary, so it was difficult to tell. But I think there'll be some change of personnel anyway. They Cordero possibly.
That's what I was
back
going to
in
ask.
the team.
Yeah, exactly. Cordero is one to factor in.
Yeah.
Yeah. So other players that are on this list is Nizam Carr, David Havili, Jaco van der Walt. We've kind of discussed those guys, but and Carr pick up if you can, but potentially not Shea. David Havili, I suspect, is a bit of a 1 week thing. I didn't hear what Crotty was. It was a bit of a tight hamstring or something. Was the oil that I heard, and then Jaco van der Walt as well. But one player that you probably could look at, or two actually, I wanted to bring up is Michael Fadialofa. What do you make of him? Because he was slowly trending in the right direction as well, and this was one of his breakout games, and the commentators were heaping quite a bit of praise on him.
Yeah, he's one of those probably rare locks that's got really good ball handling skills and tends to get open quite a lot, and that's obviously a fairly handy combination. There's not too many that do.
No, that's right. So he's been fairly well. He's last 3 weeks, 6 points, 5 points, and 16 points. So this has been a bit of a standout performance. But yeah, just wanted to keep a eye on for those who are actually playing lock roulette. You could roll the dice on him and then see and hope for a bit more consistency around this level. CJ Velleman's another guy I really like, and we've liked for ever since he kind of came on the Kings scene earlier this year, and he put up 15 points in a tough loss against the Lions as well. He seems to be a lot more matchup proof. He just seems to be battling a little bit with Chris Cloete to get that starting position. Is there anyone else you wanted to look at or potentially could be available? Is there anyone coming back from injury?
Issa, I think, is another player who'll be out there, and obviously a pretty tasty home match against the Kings, and he's been getting it done the last few weeks, and would expect decent things again from him.
Yeah, good shout. Good player. Really like Issa. Padded a little bit of his stats with that, but still, this is not the first time he's done that. He's very abrasive, good ball carrying, and we say it was a bit of a meat pie. He still had to run the channel and still had to be smart enough and be disciplined enough to play his zones that he was supposed to be in and snare it. It was really, really good. A lot of people wouldn't have been able to do that. He's a good player. All right. And the last match, which is the last on match of the day that we've chosen, is the Highlanders versus Sharks match. So how did that go? Some of those keener listeners may have picked up, I say may because it was very, very subtle, may have picked up a change in sound recording. This is because at the time of initial recording we didn't have the league update, so we couldn't bring you the top managers, the top leagues and the top score for the week. We have that now. Unfortunately, the man primarily made of moss isn't with us. He had a prior appointment at get a haircut. Something about Graham Morey and a perm or something. He said to look it up. I haven't done that yet. Anyway, so the top manager for the week was Angus Gourlay, 240.9. Just Gus 2.0 was his team. Congratulations, Gus. It's a cracking score. The top managers for the week, or the top 5 managers. Number 1 is Andre Heineke. Congratulations, sir. I don't believe that's your first time at the top of the overall leaderboard. Number 2 is Josh Bernard. Number 3, Sam Konowski. Number 4, Luke Crombie. And number 5, Franco Duplessis. So there's a lot of very familiar names on that list. Very, very impressive lads. Keep it up. Top leagues. Number 1, the B&B League. Congratulations, fellas. Back at that top spot. Number 2, the Highveld Bowl. Number 3, Chip and Chase. Number 4, Dave Stickheads. And number 5, Commonettas. Again, there's a lot of very familiar leagues, names of leagues in these top 5. And there's a lot of very familiar ones just inside or outside of that top 5 spot. We usually don't read out anyone outside the top 5, but the number 6 league name I thought was pretty damn good, so I thought I'd read it out. It was Glorious Make Benefit Total Victory Cup. Shout out there. That's a great name. All right, a little bit of admin. You can follow us on Twitter at Fantasy Rug Draft or Fantasy RUG Draft. Drop us a mail at support@fantasyrugbydraft.com. There's a lot of mails coming through around trades at the moment. It's great. Really good to see. And I understand that you don't want to be putting it on social because it's in the public domain then. So if you wanted to get our advice on certain trades, then send us an email and we can do that behind closed doors. Thanks for downloading and listening. I'm Bruce Wilkinson. He's Nathan Mossman.
Lest we forget.